The time is 7 o'clock, so we will call to order the November 19th meeting of the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Do you have the ability to call the roll, or?
I do.
Yes, you do.
Printed me off a member list.
Thank you.
Annie
It's all
Adams,
prepared.
Susan Jones, Tommy Griscom, Yoshi Huang, Joshi. Thank you. Audrey Ishii,
Present.
Bruce Michelson. Here. Keenan Portis, Sartak Prasad, Nancy Westcott,
Here. We have another member.
and Carmen Franks. Okay, Annie is in at 7:01.
Walk away. That was 7:01.
Present.
At this time, I'd like to check. Oh, first of all, let me say that we do have a quorum. We need 6. Oh, well, 6 to meet. I guess we have 6 even without counting Marcus, who I believe we probably can count since you're a
No.
proxy. No, we can't.
No,
Okay.
because I'm not a Public Works employee.
Oh, okay.
So I can't proxy
That's
for
right.
Carmen.
Okay.
So I don't get to vote either, which is fine, because you don't want my input.
Oh, we do want your input. We definitely do. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda to suggest? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go on to approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. We have both the September meeting and the October meetings for the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Susan Jones, seconded by Bruce Michelson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, thank you. These minutes are approved. And now we have public input and commissioner communications. Does anyone have anything they wish to share, any observations or other concerns that have come up since we last met?
I want to thank Audrey for coming to the Plan Commission meetings and giving impassioned speeches on creating a walkable city. And at the Plan Commission, they talked about using walking as the default mode. Currently, driving is the default mode. And it was just great. I just want to thank Audrey for showing up, for giving a great speech. She talked about lowering speed limits. And again, I just want to thank Audrey. I appreciate your work and your advocacy on this.
Thank you.
Also, my observation, I think there's been discussion within student community that because it's after daylight saving, it's getting dark earlier and earlier, and biking in dark is very dangerous. So there's been discussion about people should have their bike lights on when they're biking. They need at least to try to get the bike lights. I don't know if this year is getting better since we had the Light the Night Day in September, and we had a record high of giving out all the lights. But yeah, I think that's something, maybe you have more observations on that, and how can we work better to arise the sense of please put your lights on in the winter night. Yeah, just an observation. Yeah.
Yes, and I will note that the city of Urbana, sort of through BPAC, did contribute to those, something like a third of those lights.
That was our budget. We spent
Yes.
our budget on lights.
So it's good to see them being used, and I do not personally have an idea how to expand the usage or the awareness that they need to be used. We could talk to, we might talk to Sarthak and see when he comes, what's the next steps.
But I agree with you. It's dark. I'm not seeing people, even if they have tiny little lights. I'm having a hard time seeing them, and they think that they're visible, but they don't know that they're completely invisible. So, yeah, we might need to do something.
And of course, much more frightening is no lights at all, or as I've frequently seen, is pedestrians all dressed in dark and in the street, and it is scary when you're driving. That's perfect. It makes such a difference if anything is light colored. Just by way of introduction, this is to be presented to the City Council, and they expect presentations to be about 10 minutes. So I did try to keep that under 10, and it may need a little bit more slimming, but we'll see what kind of suggestions we have tonight. Okay. The first thing I want to point out is bikes for happy and healthy kids in Urbana is how we're going to grow Urbana's population and make this a city that people really want to live in. And this is a wonderful site, although all the racks are full, and I can easily imagine some people asking for a ride from mom or dad because the racks are full. But we will work on that. The Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. This is all online, of course, and I'm not going to go through this all, but the main thing I'm here tonight to speak to you about is our work in advising the City Council on bicycle and pedestrian issues. And especially, we've really tried to focus in the last year on evaluating and making recommendations for action. I think we feel like just reviewing, just commenting isn't quite enough. We need to move on to actual action to make this to keep this the recognized bike-friendly city that it is, and more than friendly, actually superb. I want to shout out to our BPAC commissioners. We do have one vacancy right now, and we have members that were here for at least part of last year, and some of them were into this year, and especially I'd like to mention John Zeman, who really brought in some new initiatives, such as our goals framework, and Kara, who implemented it, Kara with the Park District, and even participated remotely for a while, and Yusuf Shah, who reviewed our pedestrian master plan and presented that. For the past couple of years, we've had many reviews and input in formal, these are strictly those with an actual presentation involved, more or less formal. The EQL projects and also the capital improvements plan should be listed there with that. And you all have that in your packet, so I'm not going to go through this. You can read it there. The recommendations that we passed by vote include applying for a Safe Streets and Roads for All federal grant. Specifically, we suggested a speed management study as part of the Vision Zero action plan, and also traffic calming demonstration projects with suggestions that just to help spark some thinking about it. These were not required locations or treatments, just to start thinking about what we could do for traffic calming. Recently, we suggested reducing the East Main Street and Pfeffer Road speed limits to at least the state statutory urban speed limit of 30 miles per hour or less. coordinating e-bike and micromobility regulations with all the local agencies, and then promoting the downtown pedestrian bicycle activity with a farmers market pavilion. Just a side note here, I think we all probably would like to think in the future about more resolutions so we have a means to communicate, but I shouldn't go there because we should just keep practicing. Okay. Advancing the BPAC mission. As I mentioned, John Zeman brought us the brilliant idea of having a framework of goals rather than just being reactive, which through much of our history we pretty much have been. Now we're trying to move towards being more proactive. And so the goals I'm going to more or less focus on tonight is speed reduced to ranges compatible with that Vision Zero commitment, and we'll explain more about how the University 25-mile-per-hour zone extended to residential areas might impact the city's livability and walkability and safety, obtaining the SS4A grant and the East Main Street resolution. We have committed to being a Vision Zero city, and I'll give you a little more on that later, but the strategies include especially prioritizing equity and community engagement and managing to speed to safe levels. We as a city have done a lot of the other items that are in black there. We've, through RPC, we've collected, analyzed, and used data to understand some trends in traffic deaths and injuries. We've got leadership there. We've got cooperation. We even have a timeline to achieve zero traffic deaths, which is 2030. Why does this matter, being a Vision Zero city? Unfortunately, since the pandemic, and actually before that, but it worsened since the pandemic, our traffic deaths across the country have exceeded 40,000 every single year. And it's been that hasn't been totally even either. It's been a 45% increase in pedestrian deaths. Perhaps a little more if you include all vulnerable road users. But essentially, people outside the car are those who are adding a lot to this toll. And it's 80% more likely for Black people to be killed as a pedestrian while walking than whites and non-Hispanic Americans. You can see here there's the line that represents the average for the entire population, relative pedestrian danger, and Black people have an 80% greater risk. I'm sorry, this is the Black people right here. American Indians or Alaskan Natives actually have the highest risk. And these are dramatic numbers. And one example of that in inequality is on the East Main Street, where there is no infrastructure for pedestrians. So pedestrians are forced into the street, and yet that street is at 35 miles per hour, higher than the state statutory speed limit. BPAC did forward a resolution calling for at least understanding that parts of this are not even in the city. Infrastructure improvements may be a long time to come. We called for a minimal effort to address this issue, just reducing the speed. And ironically, this photograph is in the Examine Urbana Comprehensive Plan current conditions. The higher speeds increase the likelihood of pedestrian fatalities quite dramatically. For even just a reduction of 5 miles per hour, we go from a 45% chance of fatality to 5%. The person who was killed on East Main perhaps would be alive today if it was at 30 miles an hour instead of 35. People were probably going 40 since it's set at 35. There's other issues besides speeding. Vehicles today are much larger and heavier. We have sedans and station wagons have fallen in favor over the years. Car SUVs, and especially the large front-grilled truck SUVs have really increased in popularity. People feel vulnerable on the roads. They want protection. They want to feel armored. It's not that people are feeling aggressive, but unfortunately, the impact becomes an arms race. As the SUV becomes more popular, people need to participate to feel safer. What can we do for lowering speed limits? It's not something that's out of the ordinary. We already have 22 states with a speed limit of 20 miles per hour or 25 for urban districts. These in dark blue are those that are at 30 miles an hour. So you can see Illinois is at 30, yet Ohio and Michigan are at 25. Western states, where they're going at 80 miles per hour between urban areas, are 25, so that people will slow down and have a look at their what they have on offer. So we can do this. It's not something that's completely out of the ordinary. Naturally, we would like to see the state change the law, but as with all politics, that could take a while. But there is the possibility of doing it locally, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. Other reasons to do it: police involvement. Responding to motor vehicle crashes is accounting for 3 police officer FTEs. And they almost always require multiple unit response, which makes problems with patrol availability elsewhere. So we need more officers. If we can reduce the crashes, we might be able to reduce police costs or at least increase their effectiveness. Traffic deaths in Urbana are a problem. We certainly don't hear hardly anything about the injuries. That rarely makes the news. And yet for every ped death, there's around 20 injuries, some of them life-changing. And that's on an annual basis. The problem is this is not actually normal. This is only normal since 2008. Prior to 2008, for the 10 years before that, we had only 3 pedestrians killed in 10 years. This is somewhat of an arbitrary break, but it happens to be where the data is that we had it. A lot of things maybe happened after 2007. Cell phones, distraction, increasing popularity of SUVs. It's hard to say. All I know is it does appear to be somewhat of a significant trend to go from 3 to 10. And in fact, if you want to compare it not just over time, but let's look at how it occurred across our twin cities, where we actually have a somewhat comparable population next door. In the first 10 year, 1998 to 2007, there were a total of 34 deaths in Champaign and 32 in Urbana. I'm sorry. And 12 in Urbana, 12. This is across time. The blue is the earlier time. The red is the more recent time. So 34 in Champaign, 12 in Urbana. In the most recent 10 years that we have recorded, there were 32 in Champaign, so they actually reduced by about 18%. There were 21 traffic deaths in Urbana. We increased by 61%. That's all traffic. Our pedestrian death rates, similarly, in Champaign, they actually dropped from 8 to 6. In Urbana, they increased dramatically, as I earlier said, 3 to 10. And there's also a bicycle deaths, which would make that 11 if you count that in there. And then more recently, we just got the LRTP 2050 update, and we're staying pretty much on this very unfortunate track. For the 5-year period, Urbana had 4, Champaign had 5. Champaign may be increasing quite a bit, but Urbana is still approximately twice the rate of Champaign. Okay. The RPC has recognized the need for a Vision Zero resolution as well, following the lead of Urbana, who passed ours in October of 2020. They passed one in September of 2022. And they noted there that they acknowledge that local safety plans may result in changes to each participating agency or municipality's approach to the planning and design of streets, and the legal and legislative frameworks, including the potential to advocate for reduced speed limits. So RPC has acknowledged this. It is listed in their strategies in the LRTP 2050, which you all just heard a presentation on. They have their Vision Zero resolution posted. It mentions 11 people killed while walking and in wheelchairs. I noted this mistake to RPC, and they said they would correct it. It's actually 11 in Urbana alone were killed. There were 6 in Champaign for that period, so it was a total of 17. So, does it work to reduce the speed limit on a citywide basis? Many places have started doing it besides the 22 states that I showed you earlier. Many of the cities such as Boston and the surrounding smaller communities, Cambridge, Somerville, and so on, they did an actual controlled study and found that what really happens is the chance of exceeding that speed by a lot drops considerably, more than the average speed dropping. Now note, they did not increase enforcement. They did not increase public relations. This is just the effect of putting up signage. In Seattle, they did an experiment where they increased the frequency of signs, again, without more enforcement and without more public relations. They simply increased the frequency of putting up signs and lowering it. And they also found that this was effective. Crashes still happened, but they weren't as dangerous. One of the primary principles of Vision Zero is to recognize that crashes will happen, and you want to reduce the kinetic energy, that is the motion of crashes, which reduces the damage. So is it possible to have 0 fatalities in Urbana, or is that just a pipe dream? Actually, before 2007, we expected 0 deaths. We were shocked when there was a death. Sometimes now it hardly makes the news because it's an annual expectation, pretty much. Other cities have actually proven that you can get 0. Hoboken, that has a population of 60,000, achieved 0 deaths. Jersey City, with more than 200,000, also achieved 0 deaths with a Vision Zero framework. Oslo, Norway, 600,000 people, achieved 0 deaths. I believe there was 1 death, but wasn't exactly a traffic death. Cars and trucks are bigger and more dangerous now. The distractions have increased. All of this gives us reasons to adapt to that with changing our residential speed limit. Our Imagine Urbana comprehensive plan goal to attract more residents depends on our ability to stand out, maybe even next to Champaign, next to the state, but to stand out for public space, vibrancy, and comfort, not to be designed for cars passing through as quickly as they can. I would also like to point out our Vision Zero resolution did call for developing a Vision Zero action plan, which, again, speed management is probably the most important factor, and one that actually could be a standalone if we didn't, or attached to something like an RPC plan. And it called for utilizing funding sources for projects not included in the city budget. This is where the Safe Streets for All resolution that we did forward to you, the City Council, comes in. We would really like to see a budget passed to enable some action on the Vision Zero commitment in Urbana. And this was passed both in 2023 and 2024, calling for an application for 2025. The ability to, we are considering ourselves a Vision Zero city. In order to be recognized as part of the network, of which there are about 50 cities nationwide, they surprisingly have not changed the goalpost since we committed in October 2020. It's still the clear goal, which we have. The mayor has publicly and officially committed to Vision Zero, which we have. The Vision Zero planner strategy is in place. Not yet. We're hoping to see that happen as a result of the next Safe Streets for All grant. And then the one thing that they did change a little bit, key departments, including transportation, public health, and mayor's offices, are leading. Previously, it just said engaged. So we are looking to see some leadership from our administrative side. And that can lead us to be the Vision Zero that we all want to be. I'll take any questions.
Can I make a,
Is there any evidence that, does Champaign have the same speed limits basically as Urbana? I'm just wondering if that could have been a cause if there was a difference in speed limits in residential areas.
You know, I'm not sure. Urbana has got locations with a 25 mile per hour speed limit right now, besides the University District, which Champaign and Urbana changed at the same time, or nearly the same time. Whether Champaign has other streets with 25, I'm sure they probably do as Urbana does, but I don't know any details about that. Given their improving statistics, it seems, you know, a possibility. I don't know exactly why their pedestrian death rate seems to be declining. Not by a lot, though. We saw it was 6, 1 10-year period. Now it was recently, well, no, maybe it's actually increased because the 5-year period, most recent 5-year period I showed, 2018 to 2022, it had 5, which would equal 10 over a 10-year period. Not as great a rate as Urbana's, but still not a good trend. I don't know the answer to that. Being able to, I pointed out that the RPC did call for different municipalities to take their individual approaches. It recognized that they wouldn't all be following in lockstep together. If you recall the Vision Zero resolution of the RPC.
I might suggest emphasizing or figuring out the normalization of the data, because Champaign's population is much higher. So even if you would expect their deaths to be twice as high if their population's twice as high. So if ours are twice as high as theirs, that are actually might be 4 times the rate based on per capita. So,
When I've said twice, I am referring to the rate.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I will definitely need to make that more clear.
Okay.
Yeah, the graph was a little weird.
Yeah. Yes, I understand that the graph shows the absolute numbers
Right.
above it, but these are the per 100,000.
Okay.
These are the normalized figures.
But yeah, just mention that because that was my comment as well, as we're half the population of Champaign, which I think is a really important.
And it could even
Metric.
just be a footnote or a star at the bottom, you know, fatalities are in absolute numbers, rates are, you know, per 100,000. And then you don't have to say
Right.
anything, the chart's clear.
The
Well,
10
and so this is over time. We went from 3 to 10
Right,
in
but I'm
10 years.
seeing that-
They went from 8 to 6, but percentage-wise, their rates are much lower. Their rates were lower
Right.
for both periods. Ours was lower initially. We did have a lower rate for the earlier period. So
But it's just- it's
what has
making
happened to
sure-
Urbana?
It is just making sure, though, that people know that these are, the numbers are, it does
Absolute.
say it up there. I see it now.
Yes.
But
Thank you.
it's weird
But-
to see
But, yeah, maybe just,
10 3 times as big as 8.
well, I also, in my head, was like, well, we're half the I think you just have to say, I think you have to explain, I've been attending all the city council meetings, and it's like there's one member in particular who will just very specifically go down a rabbit hole on this. So I would suggest just saying, you know, just this slide recognizes that Urbana, you know, just says half the population. You know, just explain how you ran the numbers. That's all. Just
Okay,
half the
yes,
population, and then you read the average annual based on 100,000, and then people will say, "Oh, okay, I get it."
Right. And I know I presented this slide in a way back when we passed the Vision Zero resolution in 2020. And at that time, yeah, I focused on this slide, and one of the points, you know, I especially made is why these people are on the side here. I'm trying to make people understand that these are these are humans, and we can even give names to them. You know, this is Tonya Barnett. These are people who were just going about their day, did not expect their life to end suddenly on an Urbana street. This is Shelley Taylor, who was walking to the Starbucks.
These are actual people who
Yeah,
died.
this is Joseph Wilski, who was returning from Schnucks to one of his an apartment downtown, which is where we would love to see more people living.
Yeah, I was unclear on that, but I do think we should, I like the idea of naming their names and who they are. I recently met a person who was in the vehicle that watched Shelley Taylor be thrown 50 yards and die. And it was incredibly traumatizing for her. And you know, yeah. And they said that Shelley was literally just like, hey, just crossing, like working out, crossing the street, and then like looking like these people here on this side of the slide is what you're trying to say.
Exactly.
But I do think it's important to name the names, because these are people, these are our residents who should not have died.
And I would, you know, we love our city, and we love the people in the city even more. You know, we want this to be a city for everyone.
The other thing, well, my comments are this. The New York Times this morning talked about how children, which means through age 19, the number one killer of children are firearms and traffic. In that order. Firearms, traffic, 3 is drugs. So this is a safety issue, you know, for our children. And it stops our children from getting exercise. It stops our children from being able to walk or bike to school, just because we want to drive our cars a little bit faster, save 10, 30 seconds. The other thing I'd like to say is you have a slide on here that has, which I thought was interesting, about multiple officers responding to an accident. Again, I was attending a city council meeting, and one council member said, yeah, I saw all these like officers out there, and it was like all of them were out there. And honestly, we have about 3 to 4 officers on duty at all times in this city. So when there is an accident, they are all out there. So this is a big deal. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I think is really important about your presentation in comparison to Champaign is we can afford this. Meaning we can afford to re-sign our streets, which is what you're suggesting. You're not saying we need to do bump outs, we need to repaint, you're saying we're going to re-sign our streets, put up new signs. And so I just would also like to say that's something we can afford. The other thought I have is I know it's a 10-minute presentation. I think it would be great if we could continue this conversation with council. If you give your 10-minute presentation and say, we would love to come back to council and present again on this topic and see how we can move this topic forward. Because you're not going to be able to get all of this in 10 minutes, as much as we all want you to get all this in 10 minutes. I think maybe we leave some, you know, we could maybe ask if there's a way. And then my other thought that I want to say is for our goals is to continue to work more closely with Public Works on agenda items, and make sure that we're working with Public Works to move forward in a way with them. And I think that's what's been really helpful here is like you were saying at the beginning, John was like, hey, let's set some goals. Let's like, you know, so leadership, like we'll be working with the leadership of the city to help implement these, you know, these initiatives. So thank you. This is an absolute fantastic presentation, Audrey. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the issues, I don't recall now, did I mention this in the presentation or to you guys separately, is that we previously always had a city council member on BPAC. So we had that ability not only to have an ear on council and that kind of information to provide to council when things just come up by the way, but also when we had a resolution or, for example, Bill Brown brought snow shoveling to the city council. He was on city council at that time, so he was able to adopt a put forward a resolution and ask for adoption. And, they just, some of you were probably there, they discussed it almost to death. And then they accepted a slightly reduced version of it. But he was there, he had a seat at the table. And later, when he left city council, he still was able to go on special occasion, especially he did in fact present on East Main Street. Everyone was terribly shaken by the death of Tonya Barnett, and he went and spoke to city council about the things that we would like to see. So he was not on council at that time, so he just asked, but as a courtesy, they let him speak for 10 minutes or something.
Maybe have the last slide be the names of people killed. I don't know. I just feel like there has to be a way to be respectfully.
Well, I'd like to be a little more upbeat. I always feel like Debbie Downer on these things. It just is sort of, nobody wants to hear that we're doing, half as well as Champaign on crashes. And honestly, exposure is part of what's called in statistics, exposure is part of it. There are more people walking and biking in Urbana, and that is why we need to adjust and go ahead and be the leader on going to 25 miles per hour.
and
That's
maybe-
not a reason to say, oh, we get a buy on that because,
And
because
a number
we have
you
more.
presented, I was going to say, a
Right.
number you presented that might also be really important to include in here, which is what you're talking about, which is 30%. Is it not 30% of, is it our households or is it people moving through the city? No, it's our households don't have vehicles. Am I correct? Because you
I
at Plan
think it-
Commission, you mentioned that.
The last thing I saw was like 20% don't have
Okay,
access to a
20%.
vehicle, but yeah.
And there was something about,
And
okay.
then the Lincoln Avenue corridor, I think it was quite a lot higher
Right.
than
So
that.
so I think it's important to share that information and say, this is just important to know.
You're right. That's absolutely a key part of equity, is mentioning that. And the many, for many reasons, people don't have a vehicle. But most often, it's not necessarily by choice.
That could
Thank
kind
you.
of be on that slide that has the relative, the equity issues that has
Yes,
the.
yeah, mention it
But
at
also,
that
I just wanted
time.
to say,
Right there.
those three people images, I had no idea that what the message they were supposed to send at all. I thought they were being confused by the graph.
Yeah.
Now, part of that is because I tutor people in math that are confused by
You
graphs
thought
all
that
the
was
time.
illustrating confusion
By the
about the
graph,
graph.
right. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
But-
that was the clip art I had handy in
the
2020.
picture, like the picture of the guy on the street in Urbana.
Okay.
Like that, to me, spoke really loudly of this guy could get clocked and killed right now. Look at this infrastructure or lack thereof.
Yeah, I know that in 2020 I was able to say that very clearly, and I saw a reaction from the council when I made it clear that these were people who went out the door that morning expecting to come home. Yeah,
So those were the actual.
that
people.
was the actual figure, and it seemed like it hit home at that time, but I didn't say it effectively today at all. In fact, that's a good one, that it was demonstrating confusion. I might look for different figures.
Yeah, I would say that upfront mentioning that Champaign or Urbana has more bikers and walkers, because that really would have let me not go down the path of the difference between speed limit in the cities.
Good point.
Because that's
Yeah.
what really got me. That was, I should have thought of it on my own, but on the other hand, I think that's really important to.
That's
put
right.
that
Yeah,
out
and it
front.
also casts this all in a much more positive light. Hey, we've got more walkers and bikers, so let's lean into that. Let's own it. Yeah.
And that can
Much
go on
more
where you-
positive.
and that can also go where you're talking about vehicles have changed, let's adjust. Like, that's just one thing I tell people is vehicles have changed. We're driving bigger vehicles with lower visibility. They're heavier. I mean, they're bigger, they're heavier, they have lower visibility. We have to adjust. And we also have to adjust because we have a higher population of people that are walking and biking and taking buses.
Very good.
Is there an easy to grab pie chart for the mode share between
In Urbana?
Champaign and Urbana. And I don't know if that would accurately, helpfully say,
I
well,
think there
look,
might be. There might
Okay.
be possibly in the
Like from the
LRTP
census or
2050.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be from the ACS.
Okay.
It's not the greatest data, as I
but
understand.
at least it would
yeah.
have a
But it does
a
show that,
citable thing.
yes.
This is from the census.
Yes.
Even they say that we've got more bikers and walkers than
Right,
Champaign.
right. And actually, I have heard that mentioned before as if that's an excuse. Well, we're okay. We have more walkers. So, Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I might suggest is to just use one histogram instead of two, because I love histograms, but I've met many people who just, they see a histogram and they're clueless as to what it means. So I think whether one's normalized or one not, I would just use one of the
Well, they are the histograms, and again, this you're mentioning if you're confused, then I can only imagine anybody who's not a statistical whiz. The histograms are entirely normalized. They're the rates. But it is confusing because I have Champaign for 2 different time periods, Urbana for 2 different time periods, but the totals are above. Yeah.
This seems to me like an accessible, meaning a visually accessible deck. I've been seeing a lot of not visually accessible decks. Does anybody have a comment on that? But to me, I actually just want to thank you for making it easy to read.
Yeah, I put in a conference presentation. Can you help me?
Yeah, I'll have to work on the timing. It may be too long. I don't know if anybody caught the time on that.
it's about double what you need.
Oh, really?
It
Is
was
it?
about
You thought it was
20
about
minutes.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
Honestly,
Well,
I
I
think
don't think so. I think you were talking about the presentation as well as making the presentation.
Well, here
I
and
think when
there,
you
yeah.
actually do it, I think it'll compress.
watch the video of this meeting and
The only,
Yeah.
the only
I-
thing I'm going back to is get the names and the death dates of those 3 people up there. That really hits hard. Otherwise, it
Okay.
looks like
Yes,
an
and I
insurance ad.
also have their ages too.
That
And they
really-
were, Joseph Wilski was 71. The others were around 50.
I
And
think
those
it's
were
great.
all on Main Street. 2 on Main Street, 1 right off Main Street in the
Well,
Schnucks.
Vine.
Yeah, the Schnucks parking, right, coming out of the Schnucks parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Vine, Cunningham, and then Maine. Yeah, Vine and Maine. Okay.
One thing to follow up on, the first slide was about getting kids on bikes, is how we're going to grow our way out of, or grow bicycling.
Well, grow our city even.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are working with the school district on the new 6th grade center. And a school district staff member who wanted the required number of bicycle spaces to be reduced made the claim that typically half of the bike parking spaces at the middle school are empty regularly.
I walk
Not
by them
in
all
my
the.
experience.
Yeah, no, I
And
walk
I
by them all the time.
substitute
They're
there.
full. Yeah, they're
So-
full. And then the city of Urbana, remember when we had them hunt down all the bike racks? Those are all full as well. The bike racks here are full. They are full to capacity. I mean, they need to add more bike parking.
So that is why I brought that up. The parking was reduced by the zoning administrator based on that statement by the school district staff member. So if you have,
The bicycle parking requirement?
Yes.
Or the,
for the new school, because this city staff were told that the need was not there by a school district staff member. So I'm just sharing how decisions get made. If there is different data, I am sure city staff would be interested in hearing that, whether by email or phone call or meeting or
I
whatever.
wonder if anyone has talked to Cynthia Hoyle about that, because for many years she did various activities for safe routes to school that might have included surveying the racks. She
And
might
so-
have better data than my experience, which has been that they're full. But
If you, and I can't remember if that was at the high school or if that was at the middle school, but they are both kind of next to each other. Maybe it's true for one, but not the other. I can look into what the specific email said.
And the car parking lots are empty too frequently.
Okay. So we need less car parking.
well, there's the aquatic center, which has its own bike racks. Now, I haven't seen those really be full, but that I would not have considered the Urbana Middle School because it's a long way to the entrance from there.
So do you think that the parking rates would be different for the high school than the middle school? Or just, I'm trying to collect data here.
Well, again, that's a perception of safety, right? If parents feel safe having their kids
Right.
bike, they might not feel
And
safe. when
I've
the
done
kids
bike
are-
to school day events there at that school before the construction, and those bike racks are full. That's the ones at Wiley, right? That's right, full. And they were old timey and terrible,
Right.
but they were full.
The Wiley racks were full, or the middle school?
These, the middle school racks, when I walk by at the front entrance, they're right by the front entrance,
Those
they
are
are
full.
beyond full.
Yeah.
The high school,
Really?
well, here, even at the Urbana Middle School, they need more bike parking. The city got more bike parking to the high school, and those were immediately full as well, because I walked by and saw them install them, and those were immediately packed. And Wiley, I've done bike to school events there, and those racks were full. They were not really good racks, but
All the more reason to update them. Okay. Thank
Well,
you for the,
let's check with Cynthia if she has any data on that, because honestly, I don't have more than anecdotal. So my main concern is interesting. First of all, this city council, with a couple exceptions, Diane the mayor, Charisse Hershey, Ward 3, and Mary Alice, Ward 1, are the only ones who were there when Vision Zero was passed. And so the others have no awareness of this. So it's unfortunate that it's so condensed. That's another thing, that having Bill Brown on council made it possible for us to bring Vision Zero and have it as an agenda item, and 3 of us presented. I'm trying to fit 3 people into one little 10-minute presentation. So that's a problem. And how do we get council interested in someone stepping up to be part of BPAC?
I just have one comment. Thank you for this impressive PowerPoint. I know how much effort you've taken. I just want to offer help if you need to figure out some statistics or numbers or figures. I can be there for help.
For what?
For the numbers, statistics, the charts, pie charts, or
Ah,
something.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be, I'd be happy to share with you the crash data. And I believe crash data has been harder to come by in the last, I'm not sure how many months. We used to be able to get it easily from the city open data portal. And the format changed and the updating really wasn't happening, so we have not been able to get that recently.
Oh.
So that's why I'm quoting LRTP statistics, for example, and not really going any further than that.
Okay.
And then the presentation we have on that, she doesn't actually get into the statistics in the little time that she has, and she actually kept it at 10 minutes. So, but I will practice, and I will probably talk much faster and try and reduce any extraneous.
and they can extend your time. I mean,
They
it is-
can, yes, yeah.
It's a first-class report. I think we should be proud of this.
Thank you very much.
It is great.
Okay, thank you. So we need a motion then to approve, and I will try to get on the agenda as soon as possible.
So moved?
Okay,
Seconded.
Okay, moved approval of the 2024 annual BPAC annual report. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for your help and patience. Okay. I believe the next item on our agenda is reports of city officials and staff. Do you have a report, Marcus, representing?
Do you want me to go over Carmen's comments about the goals, or?
No, I haven't had a chance to
Okay.
take that in. Carmen provided some comments on goals, but the goals are already set in stone. They've been there for a year, more than a year.
What
We
Carmen
can't change them.
did send this morning, was
The staff
the
report?
list of, yeah.
The staff report, yeah.
I don't think I've got access to that right now.
I think I do.
She sent it to our planning box, which I don't have on my phone. Okay.
Okay. Or do you want to read it?
I can read them if you like.
Okay.
Okay.
Here you go.
Okay, these are from Carmen Frank's Assistant City Engineer. City project updates are an equity and quality of life sidewalk installation, locations in construction. All FY22 sidewalk locations have been constructed and sod is currently being placed. EQL streetlights. Contract was awarded to Champagne Signal and Lighting. This includes all EQL locations except for Florida Avenue. The city has ordered lights and poles directly from a supplier for CS&L to then install. There's a 16-week lead time expected for pole fabrication. And then there are the ITEP projects in design. These are Florida Avenue and the Bakers Lane multi-use paths. The city presented the preliminary design for Florida Avenue shared use path at BPAC's October 15th meeting, and the city will present the preliminary design for Bakers Lane shared use path at BPAC's December 17th meeting and invite adjacent residents and property owners to attend the meeting and provide comment. Fourth, the North Lincoln Avenue road diet from Washer to Killarney is same update as last month, and design is underway. And fifth, the Lincoln Avenue corridor study. RPC and the city presented the current recommendations from the Lincoln Avenue corridor study to City Council on November 12th. And the public comment period will be open until January 3rd of 2025. That's the end of Carmen's staff report.
So we have something to look forward to for next month.
Yes.
We're going to get the Bakers Lane.
Yes. So show up in force so you can, grill your public works staff and tell them what a wonderful job they did. And tell them what a wonderful job they did. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
The
Sure, you're
sidewalks
coming back.
along Silver Street are in and they're looking good. And
Which one?
On Silver, on
Okay.
Between Philo and about Cottage Grove, they went
Great.
in, I think, that far. They're
That,
well
that
done,
was a
classy
specific
job.
question at Plan Commission. They were wondering why there's no sidewalks there. And we were able to tell them EQL is happening. And yeah,
And the sidewalks on Fairlawn are great. I walked on them. They definitely will be needing lighting. It's very dark, but it's very exciting. I used to live in that neighborhood, so it's very cool.
I know Carmen has also, I think, is in charge of like the street light asset management process where they are going through and they're looking at, the large and varied and diverse numbers and types of street lighting they use and trying to focus on a smaller number so that it's easier to have things on stock and to maintain things. So, keeping track of light colors and temperatures is important moving forward,
I
especially
have
with
opinions
these
on that.
new places where they're getting lights where they didn't have lights before. So keep an eye on those things, and when the lighting comes out or before the lighting goes in, maybe remind staff, hey, we're looking for X color in this area. I think they've come up with some draft, not recommendations, but like in these business arterial areas, we're looking for this temperature, and in residential areas, we're looking at this temperature and heights and styles of fixtures. But Carmen's the person to ask about that. Doing good work.
okay, thank you, Marcus. New business. In your packet, there is the meeting calendar. And I did mention in an email that it's pretty straightforward. And now we also know we do have a December meeting apparently scheduled. So do I have a motion to approve and then we can discuss if necessary? Okay, moved by Bruce,
Second.
seconded by Annie. Any discussion? Okay, there's none. Everyone in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That motion carries. Our calendar is set and may be posted on the web, which I have to also mention that John Zeman has done a wonderful job at keeping our website up to date. I've seen some commissions that don't even have their meeting calendar for 2024 posted yet, so yeah. BPAC Vice Chair. We need to have it's actually acting. That should say acting Vice Chair because I'm actually the Vice Chair and I'm just acting as the chair. So
I nominate Audrey.
I'm already the Vice Chair. I'd like to nominate Annie to be the Vice Chair. This is to act when I'm not present.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay,
move.
seconded by Susan. Any
nod.
discussion? We are forgetting the people who didn't come tonight, but they might have opinions.
Maybe we should
but-
let's nominate someone who's not here.
Does Ms. Adams accept the nomination?
Miss Adams would accept the nomination, yes.
Thank you. Okay, seeing any further discussion? Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, Annie. And the long-range transportation plan. This is a 10-minute presentation. This speaker had to cut it down from the 20 minutes she had at the Plan Commission. So she passes over a few slides. I went to the Plan Commission, and you were all invited. By the way, Annie actually came, and it was also live streamed and is up as a YouTube. But they at the Plan Commission, they actually handed out packets of the slides, so I got this special treat for showing up. But anyway, I decided we probably don't want to listen to the 20-minute one, so we'll just do the 10-minute version, and there's only a couple points maybe we can mention.
Commission, and tonight I'm here to
I guess she
present
didn't get to say her
our
name.
2-year. Good evening. My name is Susan Bergstrom. I'm the planning manager with the Regional Planning Commission, and tonight I'm here to present our 2-year-long planning process. It's the Long Range Transportation Plan 2050 for the Champaign-Urbana, Savoy, Bonneville urban area. We also have a metropolitan planning area which extends beyond those municipalities for which we need to plan because we assume that also Mahomet and Tolona will become part of our urban area in the next 20-25 years. So we're trying to look at that entire region.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you make sure that green light's on and mic close? I'm not sure if you're getting
is
picked up.
on, yeah.
Okay.
Is that better? Awesome, thank you. The LRTP 2050 is something that our staff undertakes every 5 years by federal mandate. And this is something that we have to make sure that we have a fiscally constrained plan for all transportation projects within our metropolitan planning area for the next 25 years. And it needs to include certain things according to federal regulations. The plan this year is a web plan, so it's entirely online, and it includes 6 different sections. We have the overview, existing conditions, goals, 2050 vision, public involvement, and then the appendices that have more details about our tools and models that we use toward doing projections into the future. For the LRTP 2050, we have 5 overarching goals: safety, reliability, sustainability, equity and quality of life, and connectivity. And under each of those goals, we have a goal statement that further explains how things will improve transportation in our area. We also have objectives and performance measures to benchmark how well we are achieving the plan's implementation in the future. And finally, we have strategies that are activities that QOT staff, as well as the member agencies such as the City of Urbana, can undertake to help achieve the plan. The City of Urbana strategic goals for 2024 and 2025 closely relate to a lot of the LRTP goals and strategies. I'm not going to go over everything, but as an example, Urbana strategy number 3 is infrastructure, to improve the quality of current infrastructure assets. And this lines up really well with the 5 LRTP goals. And some of the example strategies in the LRTP related to that include to always apply for infrastructure grant opportunities, to continue our annual sidewalk inventory and assessment, to provide complete street connections, including bicycles, pedestrians, and for vehicles to and between the downtowns in the core area, and also to promote strategic investment in our disadvantaged areas that integrate residents' input and needs into what we're planning for. I'm going to skip over a few of these in the interest of time, but the overall statement that I want to make clear is that we've done a lot of research of the city of Urbana's plans, and we have worked really well with Urbana staff over the last 2 years to make sure that our plans line up with your plans. The vision in the LRTP 2050 includes a section on the plan from 5 years ago, the LRTP 2045, and the status of those strategies and projects. It has a future projects section, a section on scenario modeling, funding, and how we plan to implement the LRTP. Some of the upcoming projects for the city of Urbana, or that impact the city of Urbana, include a couple of complete streets projects, which are Lincoln Avenue between Washer and Killarney, and also Florida Avenue between Wright and Hillcrest Drive. Some other agencies also have projects that impact Urbana, such as the University of Illinois' project for Pennsylvania Avenue from the Urbana city limit east to Lincoln Avenue, the proposed transit center for MTD in Urbana, the growth of MTD's hydrogen bus fleet, which would impact sustainability for all of us, and also some ADA improvements on US 150, Illinois 130 from University Avenue to Illinois 130. And a couple of the bicycle pedestrian projects that are also prioritized include the Baker's Lane Shared Use Path and the Florida Avenue Shared Use Path. In the LRTP, we do have a short section on project profiles for regionally significant projects. So these are projects that are likely to happen in the next 5 years and relate strongly to the LRTP goals. And one of those projects is the North Lincoln Avenue between Washer and Killarney. And it fulfills really well some of the objectives that we're talking about in the LRTP, and is also a high priority project for multiple areas here. We also have Florida Avenue that we consider a regionally significant project because it greatly impacts commute in our community for Champaign, Urbana, and other residents, and also impacts the University of Illinois. Vine Street is another project that the Urbana Engineering Public Works Department identified as regionally significant. It's something that, looking for construction by 2026, it might include a potential road diet, which is talking about potential lane reductions that they will study further. And it's something that will impact pedestrian and bicyclist safety, sustainability, and also connecting pedestrian facilities like sidewalks throughout that area. So those were some of the projects that have a more reasonably guaranteed funding source, but the projects, there are approximately 58 projects in the LRTP that we call illustrative projects. And those are ones where, yes, they have a priority for one or more communities, but there's no funding guaranteed for them at this point. So within the next 25 years, this slide shows the list of projects that we're hoping funding will become available for. It's also possible that communities will reprioritize what projects need to come forward depending on community needs and demands. And so these projects could become something that's more in the short term rather than long term. We had 3 rounds of public outreach in the last 2 years, and the first phase was April through October of 2023. And during that time, we had surveys and we attended public events to learn about residents' transportation patterns, what obstacles they run into, and also community demographics. We attended 13 community public events where we had our staff working with people on the surveys and looking at maps, and also an online interactive map where we had people had the ability to enter comments about certain locations and if there were transportation issues or good things that they found. Phase 2, April through July of this year, we worked with people on identifying their goals and future project priorities. And we attended 12 community events with surveys and maps again. And we did a special survey distribution through the University of Illinois Division of Management Information in July to try to gather more student input for this plan. And phase 3, we are in right now. My slide says it started September 16th and went through November 8th, but we are still obviously here talking with you, and we also have more comments that we're going to integrate into the draft plan. Specific to the City of Urbana, our outreach included the Marathon Expo for 2 years, the Jazz Walk at Meadowbrook Park in 2023, Urbana's Market at the Square for both years, Jetty Road's Neighborhood Day for both years, and then there was also a Climate Action Celebration at Crystal Lake Park in 2023, and a Neighborhood Nights event at Crestview Park in summer of 2024. So we tried to get a fair representation of what residents want and need in terms of the transportation system that we have. Our next steps are to finish up presentations, and then we're going to organize all the comments we received over the last 2 years according to jurisdiction. So the City of Urbana staff will get all the comments that we have collected over time. We have a final steering committee meeting on November 22nd. And after that, we're going to hope that our QWAT's technical and policy committees approve the plan so we can send it off to IDOT and to Federal Highway in December. It is due by the end of December this year. And one thing that I like to note is that in order for any transportation project in our urban metropolitan planning area to get federal or state funding, we have to have that in the long-range transportation plan. So we have worked really close with each agency's staff members to make sure that the projects are included so that we don't miss an opportunity for that kind of funding. That's all I have, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Mary Else?
I was just looking, so the public still has an opportunity now to provide input, is that correct?
We can take input. I actually intended to end that on November 8th. We officially could have cut it off in mid-October, but because we're still presenting, tonight is our last presentation for the public. We're happy to take comments if there are some. I would like to have everything in a final list for the steering committee on the 22nd, though.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Any questions? Okay. Are you also doing the Lincoln Corridor?
I am not.
Okay.
There's another staff member coming up.
Okay. All right. We'll transition.
I sent a link to the report if anybody's interested. It's very easy to read, at least without the appendixes. They have, I'm sorry, they have at least 50 projects, I believe, in the appendix that are not necessarily prioritized. She went over the priority projects in that presentation. I do not really recall being aware of the Vine Street project. That sounds like it's due to actually start before even Lincoln Avenue corridor. We'll have to get some input from Public Works for maybe in December on our December agenda, because it seems like that would at least be conceptual at this point. They're starting in 2026. And she mentioned that Lincoln Avenue corridor wasn't really expected to start until 2027. So that's kind of a long time to wait without stop bars on our crosswalks. I thought maybe we would want to revisit that at some point and actually move to a resolution, because I know Annie gave a really excellent presentation on that topic. And in fact, City Council has specifically asked that question, people who weren't there several years ago, which was 2019 when that really came up. So it's very easy to find, though. LRTP 2050, you don't need the link, anything to look up. It's very, very easy. But what isn't here now is that ability to comment. They took that down, so you would have to send an email if you wanted to comment on anything about it.
I felt the most important thing of that presentation was you said if it's not on the list, it can't be eligible for funding. I thought that was a really, really important fact.
Yeah, I agree. And that would include that 50 project list. So I think people have really tried to be pretty exhaustive about what we might want to do so that something is at least on the list. Marcus, do you have any insight into that topic? I'm guessing we try to be very exhaustive, anything that could happen.
Yeah, I've only gone to one of the LRTP meetings. Kevin usually goes to those, but it's an interesting sort of discussion. There's a lot of negotiating about like what projects get on there and where the budget gets shifted around because of the requirement for it to be on the list if it's not funded, and then timing of when projects would happen. It's an
So is there a
interesting
little bit
discussion.
of horse trading between communities, would you think?
That's what it feels like.
I thought the clock was off a little bit in this. I mean, Philo Road from Colorado to Windsor was handsomely resurfaced over the last 2 weeks. And that seemed to be on here as something coming up. And so.
Yeah, I kind of
things got a
noticed
little
that
backwards
too. I
there,
was
so.
wondering. Yeah.
And so it sounds like in 5 more years, there will be another plan created.
Correct.
So that may,
They can even do amendments if they need to. If some great opportunity comes up and, we didn't get it in there, you can do an amendment. But these plans are important, and none of us really, well, I guess some of us do come from Joshi, you come from a planning background, right? But most of us don't really. And these plans are important, like the pedestrian master plan and the bike plan. We never pictured University Avenue being a place that you would want to think of pedestrians and bicycles, because it's not in the city, partly. A lot of that is outside the city limits, so it just didn't really come on our radar. But had that been in our plan, IDOT would have bike lanes going in there right now. So, boy,
And just imagine if you wanted to be somebody who wanted to travel through town. If you could easily take a relatively safe thoroughfare rather than having to jog through residential streets and lose time. I mean, if you wanted to get someplace directly and straight and get out to the country roads and then head south to Sydney for your ice cream, rather than having to go down Curtis where there may or may not be a shoulder to ride on. I love bike lanes.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I know Annie's
Or shared use
expressed
paths.
this before too, and I feel the same way, is that I never would have imagined Green Street being a beautiful and friendly place to bike. I mean, those bike, and all it is paint. It's just astonishing. And it just makes it more attractive for cars too. I mean, it's not just bikes. It's totally amazing. So, yeah, I feel a little upset that it's hard for us to appreciate how important these planning documents are. And and then one thing I'd mention is their safety stuff is under goals. So here they have their goals for safety, which are they're a little wonky. I've mentioned this before. They use 5-year rolling averages to keep things from bouncing up and down real dramatically, but they still do because they're only 5 years. So it's very little data, and just because we have such small sample size anyway, that just causes a whole lot of spiky data. And they keep changing the baseline. So you don't get that vision of, wow, 10 years ago it was a much friendlier city to be in than today, because the baseline keeps changing. It's only 5 years, the baseline is only 5 years earlier. So it doesn't give you that longer term image, and I have expressed that to RPC, but they are very limited in what they can do. They have federal mandates. The feds don't want us to, on one hand they do. It's kind of left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. We are getting tons of wonderful information from USDOT now. Let's hope it continues in the next 4 years. Great push for reducing speed limit is that they basically adopted Vision Zero completely, which is just fantastic. But at the same time, these reports that have been mandated forever are mandated to be that way, to basically hide how bad it is. Although that mandate has changed over the years. Several years ago, they had easily 20 years of data in those reports. You could see the trends. They broke it out by city. All this stuff came down from the feds. You know, we can do what we want to bring it up to them, but it came down from above them. And so here are their strategies. And again, it just doesn't really point the finger like we would want for our Vision Zero action plan, like actually do this, not just sort of, oh, all these people should think about, you know, facilitating, but they do have speed on here somewhere.
I was going to say, Audrey, also, I think one thing that BPAC's hoping for is local crash data. That we are, there might be a path forward to finding hyper-local, like basically Urbana, up-to-date, month-by-month crash data, so we can start finding spaces that are problematic areas where we're spending a lot of money and time dealing with vehicular crashes or other types of crashes. So
well,
this
and
is
our,
something
our
BPAC's
police
working
department is working on that, right?
Our police, yep, our police department is working on that, and it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And so here's a couple things of immediate relevance to us. Work with municipalities and transportation study groups, I would say that's us, to evaluate existing speed limits on the local roadway network. They list QOT staff. So again, not really pointing the finger at you, Urbana, do this. That's the problem I see here, and I will put in a comment. If I haven't already, I have to look at my email. And here's one: complete applications for available federal safety programming, funding. Well, we know Urbana can also do it, although I'd really prefer it with their experience if Urbana paid them to do it, but that's that. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts? Thanks. Okay. Announcements? I'll go back. No announcements? We're going into the holiday season. Big time here. From, tonight is like patio party time. And then it doesn't feel like Thanksgiving somehow. Maybe the other people are at a pool party. And then
they're all having drinks because they got out of being vice chair for BPAC.
Or making a hard decision on the annual report. Okay. No announcements and future topics.
I'll just suggest something for us to think about informally, and I'll bring it up more formally in the spring, but it's occurred to me twice or three times tonight. Something that's occurred to you, why there is no turn on red restriction at the corner of Main and Vine going eastbound. If you look at that corner and what goes on there, the traffic pressure, the accident history, I don't get it. We're talking about, Audrey, signs making a big difference. That one seems like it's much called for. I could talk about that.
I will forward to BPAC the traffic study that was done at that intersection after the death of Shelley Taylor. And I know this was a topic Cynthia Hoyle brought up quite extensively, but I'll forward that and we can make that a future topic.
Thank you.
And maybe lights, ideas for getting more people with lights.
Oh, getting the students bike lights. Would you say it's a student issue? U of I student issue?
I heard there's more within the students community, so maybe more students issue.
So yeah, we'll have to.
We can talk about
We'll
it.
ask Sarthak to address that.
And we can talk about where it's a priority.
Or we could see if we could find a way to get like the bike project lights, and then we could send people to the bike project, or BPAC could hand out lights. I mean, it all depends on budget and light availability, but we can also hand out lights, just stand on Washington Avenue.
I know two people that have been known to go out and do Friday night lights and just hand out lights to people.
Wow. Okay, so lights is another topic.
So if you talk with Sartak, I'm wondering, I was on the Student Sustainability Committee when I was a grad student, and they've got, or they used to have $2 million a year to spend on sustainability projects. If a bicycle-related student group were to, say, do something like promote safer and more cycling on campus, promote the registration, the bicycle registration program, and for every person who registered their bike, when they registered it, they got a bike light set. I mean, that's a cost, but then the bike lights would be getting distributed throughout the year as students were registering their bicycle. And it could be seen as, a student perk that would be funded by the university. And it then might also take some pressure off the Light the Night events, but it would make it a year-round program.
Boy, that seems like a brilliant idea because, as you may have heard, they have a terrible time getting people to register. So having that
Right.
kind of incentive could be really cool. Yeah.
And I mean, Sartak is great with the programs he does, and it would be a student engagement thing because then the students would be doing it, and it might be, at least somebody for Sartak to work with rather than him having to do it all.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it can even be a if it's somehow they can get the funding from the Student Sustainability Committee for the bike light packages of bike lights, right, which is what we're hoping for. And then folks from the bike project could set up. It would be a great way too, because the other thing is people don't know that there are these facilities on campus where you can get your bike fixed and you can, learn how to fix a bike. And it would be a great way to even promote that facility on campus. People don't even know it exists, and it's a community facility.
So it's not as glamorous as like solar or other cool things, but you can tie so many other things. It could be a multifaceted approach. It could be, increased bike registration, lights, advertising, or more, bike repair stations, indoor bike parking. I mean, you can go as crazy you want to go, but it is $2 million a year that you could tap into.
Then we'd get our budget back.
DNR bikes? Yeah, do you know them? No, no, Baker, no. That's what he's talking about. Having, not knowing. But no, DR Bikes is on Briggs Street.
Griggs.
Briggs. Down Ray's here and God, they're amazing. Well, and he does a lot of work in the community. Yeah. One of the people that goes out and hands off the bike. No, no. And they don't see it. For example. Right. Oh, I walked out there and couldn't walk out.
Yes. Yes,
Okay, thank you, Marcus.
yes. Meeting adjourned.